January 14th, 1995. Ballas Park Place Casino, Atlantic City. Neon lights reflected off the worn red carpet. The sound of metal coins clinking together pulsed like the heartbeat of a room that never slept. Reid McNeal walked slowly toward a keno machine, an ordinary figure with nothing remarkable about him among hundreds of people hoping for a life-changing moment that night. He bought 10 tickets, $10 each, $100 disappearing as casually as a familiar habit. No hesitation, no long deliberation. Reid wrote down his numbers. 84, 27, 37, 51, 62, 74, 79. Numbers that looked meaningless, carrying no sense of luck, following none of the superstitions gamblers usually believed in. The machine began to spin. Lights flickered. The balls dropped one by one number. Then the second, then the third. The room remained loud, but in that small corner, time seemed to slow. 8 out of 8. The screen froze. Payout, $100,000. For most people, this moment would be screams, trembling hands, tears, frantic phone calls to loved ones. But not Reid McNeal. He did not smile, he did not gasp, he did not double-check the ticket. He did not look around for witnesses. His face was calm to the point of coldness, as if the machine had merely confirmed something he already knew, rather than handing him a miracle. He took the ticket and walked toward the cashier with steady steps, neither faster nor slower. In that moment, what sent a chill down the spine was not the money, but the silence. The silence of a man who had just beaten odds of 230,000 to 1, without the slightest trace of surprise. The cashier looked at the ticket, looked at Reid, then looked at the ticket again. She had seen every reaction in her career, faces exploding with joy, tears of disbelief, people unable to process what had just happened, but never this. No one wins $100,000 and looks like they're collecting a monthly paycheck. No one plays those numbers with that kind of confidence, and no one hits big with eyes so empty. A strange feeling crept into the air, thin, hard to name, but strong enough to make people pause. Not suspicion of cheating, but the sense that what had just happened was not entirely random. As if somewhere, before the balls ever dropped, the outcome had already been decided. And if that was true, then the real question was not how much Reid McNeal had won. It was when he knew it would happen. Somewhere else, thousands of miles away from the casino floor in Atlantic City, there was a man no one in that room could see. His name was Ronald Dale Harris. Not a gambler, not an outsider, not someone chasing dreams under neon lights. Harris was a civil servant, a 41-year-old programmer working for the Nevada Gaming Control Board, the most powerful authority overseeing all gambling activity in Las Vegas. His job sounded simple and clean. Inspect slot machines, review software, make sure casinos were not cheating players, a guardian of fairness, at least on paper. Harris earned about $48,000 a year, enough to live, not wealthy, not desperate. A normal apartment, a normal car, no luxury watches, no mansion. No one looked at Harris and thought this was a man who would make history, and that ordinariness was the most dangerous thing about him. Every week, Harris walked into casinos across Nevada carrying a laptop and an official badge. Back doors opened without questions. Security nodded. Managers smiled, shook his hand, offered coffee. No one watched him, because he was the one who watched. Harris was one of the very few people allowed to access the source code of electronic gaming machines, the place where millions of dollars were won and lost every day. There were no flashing lights there, no bells, only cold lines of code and algorithms described by a comforting word, random. But when you stare long enough at something called random, something strange happens. It begins to look ordered. Harris was not a genius, but he understood more deeply than anyone around him. He knew why a machine paid, why it did not. And in that quiet, very human moment, a thought began to form. Other people did not understand the system. They trusted it. They called it luck. They accepted losing as part of the game. Harris was different. He did not play. He read. He inspected. He knew what lay behind decisions others called fate. And when an ordinary man realizes he understands the system better than everyone betting on it, moral boundaries start to blur. Not in an explosive moment, but slowly, like water soaking into dry ground. Harris did not think he was a bad person. He thought he was simply different, smarter, able to see more clearly. And if laws were written by people who did not understand machines, then maybe those laws were never meant for him. That is how great tragedies usually begin, not with greed, but with the belief that one stands apart from the crowd. To understand what happened next, you have to step away from the casino lights and into the silent machines themselves. A slot machine does not think, it does not feel, it does only one thing, repeats what it has been programmed to do. Inside each machine is a small chip called an EPROM, containing every rule of that miniature world. How much money is paid, when it is paid, the odds of winning and losing, all of it lives inside lines of code no gambler ever sees. The heart of the system is something given a reassuring name, the random number generator, RNG. Random sounds like freedom, like destiny, like chance. But to Harris, it was just mathematics. And mathematics has no magic. Harris did not need to break machines. He did not need to hack them. He did not need to sneak around. His job was to inspect those chips, confirm they ran correctly, confirm casinos were not cheating players. And in doing so, he realized a truth that was hard to accept. Random is not chaos. It is a sequence produced by formulas. If you know the formula, you no longer have to wait. You can predict. When Harris looked at the system, he did not see risk. He saw order. Not the kind everyone sees, but the kind that appears only when you stand close enough, long enough, and understand deeply enough. That feeling is dangerous because it does not feel like temptation. It does not whisper about money. It whispers about power. The feeling of knowing what will happen before it happens. The feeling of standing in a room full of people, placing bets, while only you know the outcome. To the rest of the world, every pull of the lever is a prayer. To Harris, it is an equation with a solution. He began to see slot machines as boxes that simply followed commands, and the people around them as players in a game they did not understand. When you live in that state long enough, the line between observing and interfering becomes thin. Harris did not believe he was creating fraud. He believed he was removing uncertainty, turning a game of faith into a problem of knowledge. In his mind, the difference was clear. If casinos made money from these algorithms every day, why was understanding them a crime? If the system could be read like a book, why were only some people allowed to read it? And most importantly, if outcomes were already determined by code, where did luck truly exist? These questions did not stop Harris. They made him more confident. When a person begins to believe they see the truth behind the curtain others call randomness, fear fades. In its place appears something far more dangerous. Certainty. Harris no longer saw numbers dancing on a screen. He saw the near future, a future he could name. And from that moment on, casinos were no longer places of chance. They became stages. And Harris, the only one who understood the script, stood in the wings, deciding when the curtain would rise. The terrifying part was not that the system could be manipulated. It was the feeling a human gets when they believe everything is under their control. But Ronald Harris could not step into the spotlight. His face was too familiar in Las Vegas casinos. One big win, and all eyes would turn to the man who was supposed to stand outside the game. And so Harris needed someone else. Someone anonymous enough to be forgettable, ordinary enough to raise no questions. Reid McNeal appeared that way. No criminal record, no ties to gambling, an unremarkable man living quietly, resembling thousands of Americans trying to survive month to month. Reid did not understand systems or machines. The only thing he understood was a promise.
Look at these numbers.
Some machines would pay, some numbers would hit. And one man said it with a confidence that was hard to resist. At first, everything stayed small. A few $1,000s here, a modest amount there. No show, no repetition. Harris was careful, like someone who had never made a mistake. Reid simply followed instructions. Bet, press, collect, leave. They split the money. There was no thrill, no adrenaline, just the cold regularity of a plan working perfectly. And that perfection created the most dangerous thing of all, a sense of safety. When wrongdoing continues long enough without consequence, it starts to feel like a legitimate skill. Harris began to think bigger. Slot machines had limits. Small wins were no longer enough to justify the risk building quietly beneath the surface. But there was another game, keno, where jackpots were not measured in thousands, where a thin paper ticket could turn into 6 figures. Harris understood that system. No interference, no modification, just prediction. And if the prediction was right, everything would look completely legal. No traces, no altered chips, no victims, at least on paper. At that point, the plan stopped being about avoiding detection. It became a familiar human question. Why stop here? Atlantic City appeared as the perfect idea. Same machines, same software, but no one knew Harris there. New territory, clean, without memory. They flew east believing they had passed the most dangerous phase. Reid felt differently. For him, this was no longer a clever scheme. This was escape. $100,000 was not abstract. It was rent, bills, a different life. And when people see a way out too clearly, they forget why caution mattered in the first place. Harris still thought like a man controlling a system. Reid began thinking like a man about to win. He did not want to spread tickets. He did not want to divide bets. He wanted certainty. He wanted the full feeling of victory.
I repeat,
10 identical tickets, the same numbers, the same belief that everything was calculated. This was not the decision of a fool. It was a deeply human one. When intelligence is bent by hope, when discipline erodes under false certainty, in that moment, no system betrayed them. No algorithm failed. Only a human stepped across the line between control and exposure. And from the second Reid McNeal fed identical tickets into the keno machine in Atlantic City, this story stopped being about intelligence. It became an old, brutal lesson that what brings humans down is rarely a lack of intelligence, but the moment they believe they cannot be wrong. When the keno ball stopped, the room stayed loud, but in one corner of the casino, the air shifted. 8 numbers, 8 out of 8. The screen confirmed the impossible, $100,000. With odds of 230,000 to 1, this should have been a personal explosion, a moment of shaking disbelief. But Reid McNeal simply stood there. No celebration, no shock, no search for witnesses. He held the ticket like a document he had already read. That calm, not the number on the screen, triggered the casino's invisible alarms. Cashiers were trained to read people, joy, tears, panic. But Reid brought none of it. His eyes were empty, his voice flat, asking for payment like filing paperwork. The ticket was valid. The machine was correct. The numbers were correct. Nothing technically wrong. But casinos are not run by machines alone. They are run by experience. And experience said people do not act this way after winning $100,000. A small request followed: verification. By law, large payouts require review. Reid agreed too easily, too comfortably. He returned to his hotel room with the calm of a man who believed everything was still under control. In room 417, Ronald Harris waited. One look at Reid's face told him what the casino had not said. Attention had been drawn. Not by code, but by behavior. Harris knew the process. The New Jersey Gaming Commission would get involved. Logs would be checked, timelines reviewed, cameras examined. And when a big win is studied long enough, everything around it comes under light. Harris could have fled. Logic demanded it, but a more dangerous belief whispered that nothing could be proven. The machine paid correctly. The numbers were real. Everything looked clean. And when someone grows used to the system protecting them, they underestimate the moment it starts asking questions. The knock came quietly. No drama, no force, just men with business cards and polite voices. They asked Reid simple questions: how he chose the numbers, whether he had identification. Then they turned to the other man in the room, Ronald Dale Harris. When the words Nevada Gaming Control Board were spoken, the room shifted. This was no longer a strange win. It was a problem. The questions stopped being about luck. They became about access. Harris hesitated when asked about his laptop. A brief moment, but enough to crack the perfect image he had trusted for 2 years. A search warrant followed, and when the laptop was opened, the story left the realm of feeling and entered data. Notes, prediction programs, lists of machines, times, patterns, too specific to be random. Pieces Harris had kept private now formed a clear picture for investigators. This was not luck. It was a system designed to win. Reid McNeal broke quickly. He cooperated, not out of nobility, but survival. A man realizing he stood on the wrong side of intelligence. When New Jersey called Nevada, the silence on the other end said everything. Ronald Harris, paid to protect gambling fairness, had used that power to rewrite outcomes. The investigation spread. Casinos were re-examined. Machines Harris had certified revealed traces that should not exist. This was not a loud collapse of a flamboyant criminal. It was the slow disintegration of trust. The system did what systems do, not emotional punishment, but cold documentation. And once the data was complete, justice arrived. Calm, patient, unforgiving, offering no cheap satisfaction, leaving only a deeply human feeling that even those who believe they stand above the rules cannot remain unseen forever. The sentence was delivered in a quiet courtroom, without neon lights, without coins, without chance. Ronald Dale Harris stood before the judge, like countless others, with one difference. He was not convicted for weapons, violence, or obvious greed. He was convicted for understanding the system too well. 7 years in prison, not the maximum, not symbolic, just enough to end everything he had been. His job vanished, his reputation collapsed. The badge that once opened every door became worthless plastic. A man once trusted absolutely became a warning no one wanted to discuss. Reid McNeal walked away lighter. He lost money, lost opportunity, but kept his life. Harris lost something harder to recover: trust. Not only from the state and casinos, but from himself. The man who believed he stood apart became another entry in a file, a name in a report. And the cruelest truth was that for 2 years, Harris did exactly what he was hired to stop. This story does not end with triumph. Casinos did not fall. Systems did not collapse. Machines kept spinning, generating randomness, swallowing money from people who believed in luck. The world did not change because one man was caught. But a small crack appeared in how fairness is understood. Not because technology failed, but because humans were given too much access. Harris did not steal with guns. He did not threaten. He simply walked through doors already open. That is why this story lingers. Harris's greatest mistake was not in the code. It was in the moment he believed he was invisible. Believed knowledge placed him above the rules. If he had won less, if he had slowed down, if he had not wanted 6 figures instead of 4, perhaps everything would have been different. Perhaps he would still be wearing a shirt and badge, walking into casinos with a familiar smile. But history does not run on ifs. It runs on small, human decisions made when people feel safest. And when you leave this story, the question left behind is not whether Harris deserved punishment. It is something more uncomfortable. In the systems you trust every day, are you sure you know who truly holds control? And if you were in Harris's place, with absolute access and no oversight, are you certain you would always stay on the side of the rules?